Well, good afternoon everyone and welcome back. Cumberland Outdoorsman here with a video that I've been wanting to make for quite some time now, in which I'd like to feature a classic sporting cartridge. The cartridge I'm talking about is none other than the .308 Winchester. And then in 1952 it became commercially available, and back then it was known as the T65 cartridge. But Winchester pretty much took over the manufacturing of that cartridge, and it was named the .308 Winchester. And the .308 Winchester, when it first came out, it kind of had a rough start, you know, because there were a lot of traditional hunters and shooters out there that already had a rifle chambered in .308, and the rifle I'm talking about is the 30-06 Springfield. You know, the hunters back then, they looked at that stubby little cartridge and they thought, I've already got a rifle that shoots the same diameter bullet, but it has a longer case, so I know that ballistically the .308 can't match up with my 30-06 Springfield, so why should I buy another rifle that has less power? And then on the other end, you had other traditional hunters out there that carried rifles such as the Savage Model 99 that was chambered in .300 Savage, which sort of approximated the power of the .308. Not quite, but was very well suited to the deer woods. And with white-tailed deer being the most popular North American big game animal, that's where most ammunition is sold annually, and it has been for so many decades now. They really didn't see a reason to buy another rifle just to go deer hunting. But then as time went on and more rifles were built in the .308 Winchester, the popularity started to gain some traction, and now the .308 Winchester is very popular, and it's one of America's most popular centerfire cartridges, right alongside with other pre-military cartridges such as the .223, which was also known as the 5.56. Now, with that being said, let me clarify something. If your particular rifle is chambered for .223 Remington only, then that's all you need to be shooting out of it. Do not use 5.56 ammunition out of that .223, because 5.56 ammo is loaded for a higher chamber pressure, and it can be unsafe to use that particular ammo in a .223 Remington, even though the cartridges look identical. So always go by what the owner's manual says and what's printed on the barrel, what's roll stamped on there, and only use ammunition that your particular gun is designed for. But let's go ahead and put that aside, because I really want to focus in on the .308 Winchester. Here I've got two cartridges, the .308 and the 30-06. And as you can see, the 30-06 Springfield here towers over the .308 Winchester. And that's what I was talking about when I was referring to the case capacity of the 30-06 Springfield, because it just simply holds more powder, you know, and that's why ballistically the 30-06 Springfield will outperform the .308. And that's about it. The bullet is the same diameter, it shoots the same bullet as the .308, just with more powder behind it, more push, so to speak. And so it stands to reason that the 30-06, having a longer case with more physical powder capacity than the .308, that you can load a longer, heavier bullet, as I mentioned earlier, into this case, such as the 200 or the 220 grain bullet, whereas a 180 grain bullet is about the limit for the .308, because if you start loading longer, heavier bullets, you're going to use up more of the case here, further diminishing the powder capacity for the .308. But you know, like I said, 150 to 165 grain bullets loaded into the .308 make a very effective hunting cartridge, and that's really where the .308 shines, folks, because you have just the right balance between power and bullet weight for medium to large game at reasonable hunting distances. And believe me, 200, 250 yards, even out to 280 yards, that's a long ways. And it's, in my opinion, a longer distance than a lot of hunters out there are able to make good, accurate shots. But you know, if your gun can do it and you can do it and you have the ability to make those kind of shots and put that bullet right where it needs to go at that distance, then the 308 will serve you very well. And the same difference for the 30-06 to the 308 can be said about the 300 Winchester Magnum. Here you can see the 300 Winchester Magnum is slightly longer than the 30-06 Springfield, and it's also of a larger diameter, as is apparent here by the case head. So the cartridge case capacity, everything else being equal, the diameter of the bullet and the weight of the bullet is going to be higher for the 300 Winchester Magnum, so you're going to get a lot more power than you can with the other two cartridges, but at the same time you're going to pay for it with more muzzle blast and heavier recoil out of the 300 Winchester Magnum. And these are really more suited to longer range shooting, especially out west, you know, where you're going to get long shots at really heavy game, such as big elk, you know, bigger sized elk, and moose, caribou, larger animals like that, even the big bears such as grizzly and Kodiak, if that's what you want to hunt. The 300 Winchester Magnum packs a heavier punch than the 30-06 at longer distances. But for around here where I live, you know, this is really overkill for a whitetail. You don't need this much power. Now in 1955, another cartridge was loaded out of the 308 Winchester, and that's the 243. This little cartridge took off right away because Americans really loved the idea that you could load a 100-grain bullet into the 243, a 6mm, and at the same time you could load a 75-grain bullet into the same cartridge and use it for varmint hunting, the other one being for big game use. So it was really kind of a dual purpose cartridge, you know, and it had very light recoil, very accurate cartridge, but it had a dual use, and that appealed to a lot of hunters and shooters out there. So when Winchester first came out with the 243 and their Model 70 bolt-action rifle, it was an instant hit. I mean, it instantly took off. So, you know, the 243 Winchester is a strong contender even nowadays. There's been a lot of deer harvested with the 243. This one here is loaded with a 100-grain soft-tip bullet, and I have very cleanly and effectively taken deer with my 243 on many occasions. And a lot of times, this is really all you need. This is all the power you'll ever need to go deer hunting, the 243. Why punish yourself with all that heavy recoil and muzzle blast out of a big cartridge when this is all that's necessary? This will take down any whitetail that's walking on this planet, you know. And given the low recoil and the superior accuracy of the 243, why would you want to go with anything more, you know, unless you're hunting, you know, at longer distances and shooting heavier game. But either way, the 308 Winchester is still well suited for many situations. Well, folks, 1955 saw the introduction of the 243 Winchester, like I mentioned, but it also saw another cartridge that Winchester came up with, and that was the 358, which was the 308 case necked up to 35 caliber to accept bullets such as this 200 grain round nose and this 250 grain spire point. Both of these are Hornady bullets. This is from an old Hornady reloading manual, and loaded to a maximum. These powder charges such as the 4064, 48.5 grains, gave the 200 grain soft point 2,500 feet per second. And of course, when you go up in bullet weight, your velocity is going to go down. So the same load with 39.6 grains of 4198 would give you 2,300 feet per second in the 250 grain spire point, which is still acceptable for most North American big game. That's pretty much a closer range situation with these heavy bullets, these big bullets, because the trajectory is not going to be as flat as with a longer, smaller diameter, more streamlined bullet. And then later on, decades later, in 1980, Remington introduced the ever popular 7mm 08, which was like the 243 Winchester, only instead of a 6mm bullet, there was a 7mm bullet loaded into the 308 case. And these were available with 140, 150 grain on up to 175 grain bullets, you know. And that is a really good performing cartridge. Mild recoil, but really good flat trajectory. And it was first accepted as a silhouette target cartridge, but later on hunters discovered that it was also a very, very effective big game cartridge. The 7mm 08 is definitely a darling amongst hunters that have discovered it. And I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that the 7mm 08, according to the ballistics that I've seen, will outperform new modern cartridges such as the wildly popular 6.5 Creedmoor. There it is, I said it, but you know, you can't deny the ballistics, and if you don't believe me, look them up yourself. Now the rifles that were available in the 308 Winchester were, of course, Winchester's Model 70 and Remington Model 700, amongst many others. Here I've got a couple of rifles here. This is a Remington Model 742. This is an old-timer here, folks. According to the barrel date code, this gun here was made in June of 1967. And you can tell by the condition of the stock and the metal that it's been around. For those of you that are younger hunters and shooters, this was your grandpa's rifle. But it's chambered in 308 Winchester, and it's a really good shooter. Fine contender. Somebody put a new scope on this gun. This is not my gun, but I got it out here and got it sighted in at 100 yards, and it shoots pretty well. It seems to like those 150 grain Remington core locks very well. And then the rifle that I've got, you've seen this gun before, is a sporterized Mauser K98, rebarreled for 308 Winchester. And it's got a Redfield tracker scope on it, as you can see. And it's an aftermarket black walnut stock. It's been sporterized for hunting use. This is not a wartime rifle anymore. This is for sporting and hunting use, and that's what I wanted it for. This used to belong to a friend of mine that's now passed away, and it was handed down to me because he knew that I would cherish it just as much as he did. But I've done a few things to this rifle. I've jeweled the bolt. I've reshaped the bolt handle to accommodate a scope, as you can see here. Otherwise the bolt handle would interfere with the scope. I've installed a side swing safety just like the Winchester Model 70. I haven't upgraded the trigger yet. I think I'll just leave that factory, but other than that, it's just a good hunting rifle, you know, just a good solid platform. The Mauser 98 action is very strong and very dependable, and so far I can tell that it's going to be a good shooter. So let's take a few shots with it, and then I'll be back with you for some final thoughts. Okay folks, I'm zooming in here to 100 yards where I've got some 1-gallon water jugs set up, and this time we're going to be shooting a 165 grain boat tail Hornady interlock out of the 308. Let's see if we can capture this bullet. Looks like we made a good hit. Let's go check it out. All right. Well, there's the first jug. Pretty much got obliterated. There's the second jug. There's the third jug, I think. Yep. I hear something there at the bottom. I think we might have a bullet here in the fourth jug. Let's pour it out and see what we got here. Yep, there it is. Wow, look at that, folks. Perfect mushroom. Well, folks, all of the shots that I made with this rifle, I did at 100 yards, and here's a target. This was the first shot, and it went too far to the right, so I adjusted it over to the left, and those were the two subsequent shots. And then I moved it up a little bit because at 100 yards, it's still well within the vitals of a deer, but if I get a longer shot, 150, 200 yards, that will drop down some, you know, and I'll be right on the money. I should probably go ahead and move it over to the right a couple of clicks so as to center up my pattern, but you know, with that kind of grouping right there, that gun shows a lot of promise because I haven't even tried to develop a cartridge load for it yet, you know, something that I can tailor for this particular gun. I've just been using this ammunition right out of the box, and I'm really impressed with it. I like this. I would have no problem at all going into the woods using this Remington core-locked ammo in this rifle because it just performs really well, you know. I mean, that's showing a lot of promise right there. When you get two shots that group like that, and then you move your scope up a little bit and get two more shots that group together, that's pretty good performance. But like I say, I could move it over just a couple of clicks and be centered up. But either way, that right there is good enough to harvest any whitetail, you know, out to 200 yards. And in terms of terminal performance, here's the bullet that I recovered. This is that Remington core locked, and as you can see, the lead core stayed pretty well intact. The jacket mushroomed all the way over the base of the bullet. There's the base of the bullet. And that is perfect performance. That right there, you just can't beat it, you know. Perfect, absolutely great performance out of that little cartridge. I couldn't recover the 165 grain bullets that I shot, but judging by the way it reacted on the target, I would say those would be highly effective for medium to large game as well. I think if I were going elk hunting with my 308, I would go with the 165 grain or even a 180 grain bullet and keep my shots around 200 to 250 yards or so, and I'd be in pretty good shape to harvest an elk with the 308 Winchester. Now, I've got some more ammunition here besides this Remington core locked. I just recently got this because I wanted to try it out. But it's telling me here for the 150 grain pointed soft point, I'm getting 2,820 feet per second at the muzzle. At 100 yards, I'm getting 2532. At 200 yards, I'm getting 2262. And then at 300 yards, it's just over 2,000 feet per second. So, you know, between 200 to 250 yards, this should do really well. And even a 300-yard shot should be able to anchor any deer-sized game with this cartridge here. I've got some more ammunition here. This is by Hornady. This is shooting a 150 grain interlock. I'll get one of these out and show it to you. There it is, folks. Looks like they're using a CCI primer, and I'm not even sure. But that's your Hornady Interlock 150 grain bullet. I haven't had a chance to even try these yet. See how well they do. And then here I've got some foreign ammunition. This is Cellier and Bellot. This is also 150 grains. And it's kind of unusual looking. There's the bullet. As you can see, it's got a pretty generous soft point on it, but it's got this ridge at the cone of the bullet here that engages the rifling. Should do quite well. And by the way, let me give you some specs here on this Hornady. I didn't give you that. Here it says at the muzzle 2,820, just like the Remington. And at 100 yards, it's 1.9 inches high. And at 200 yards, it's dead on the money. And 300 yards, it's 8.4 inches low. So, you know, 300 yards is kind of pushing it with the 308 in terms of point blank range. I would say 250, 260. That would be pretty much your point blank range out of the 308 Winchester with that particular load. And here I've got some older ammunition here. This is Perfecta, it says here made in Italy. And this is also a 150 grain soft point. I'll take one of these out and show it to you here. I haven't tried this stuff yet, but there it is. It looks like a 150 grain interlock bullet to me. Pretty good looking brass though. I don't even know who sells this stuff anymore, but I would venture to guess that it's pretty good ammunition. You know, any European made ammunition is usually of pretty good quality. Well folks, with that I think I'm going to go ahead and close out this video. I see the sun there going down over the treetops. And let me just say I appreciate you coming along. I hope you enjoyed this video. And for those of you that are new to hunting and shooting and you're looking for a good cartridge for deer hunting or for target shooting at long distance, then the 308 would make a great choice. Those of you that already own a 308, you know very well just how effective that cartridge is. So remember, if you like to go hunting, fishing, camping, shooting, hiking, whatever your outdoor pursuit might be, I hope you enjoy it as much as I do. But also remember, hit that like button, smash the bell icon, and subscribe. That way you'll know when more videos like this one will be coming your way. So until next time, y'all get out there and enjoy the great outdoors. And if you like to go shooting like I do, have a lot of fun. Just make sure you do it safely. I'll be seeing you.